It was a beautiful Tuesday afternoon at Buckingham Palace, and tourists were everywhere. The sun was shining, people were taking pictures, and everything seemed perfect. But then came a woman who thought the rules didn't apply to her. She was in her late 40s, wearing expensive sunglasses and carrying a designer purse. Her husband walked beside her, looking tired, like he'd been dragged around London all day. They stopped near one of the royal guards, standing perfectly still in his traditional red uniform and tall black hat. The woman pulled out her phone and started taking selfies from a distance. But that wasn't enough for her. She wanted that perfect Instagram photo, the one that would make all her friends back home jealous. She looked at the rope barriers that clearly marked where tourists should stay, and you could see her thinking about crossing them. Her husband noticed what she was planning. "Honey, I don't think you should go over there," he said quietly, glancing nervously at the guard. She waved her hand dismissively at him. "Oh, relax. He's just standing there. He won't do anything. They're not allowed to move or talk. Everyone knows that." That's where she was completely wrong, but she didn't know it yet. She stepped over the rope barrier like it was nothing. Other tourists started watching, some pulling out their phones because they could sense something was about to happen. The guard remained perfectly still, not even his eyes moving. The woman walked right up next to him, holding her phone out for a selfie. Still not satisfied with the angle, she did something incredibly disrespectful. She reached out and actually put her hand on the guard's shoulder, trying to pose like they were old friends. What happened next shocked her completely. The guard's boot came down on the ground with a thunderous stamp that echoed across the courtyard. At the same time, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "Step back from the Queen's Guard." His voice was so loud and commanding that the woman literally jumped backward in fear. She stumbled on her own feet, arms flailing as she tried to catch her balance. Her phone flew out of her hand in a perfect arc through the air. Everyone watched as her expensive smartphone landed with a splash directly into a muddy puddle right behind her. The phone lay there face down in the dirty water as tourists around her started clapping and cheering. The woman stood there frozen, her face turning bright red. She could hear people laughing. Some were even recording the whole thing on their phones. Her husband rushed over and pulled the phone out of the puddle, but the damage was done. He pressed the power button, but nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Water dripped from the charging port. The screen had a crack running across it, and water was clearly visible under the glass. "It's dead," he said, shaking his head. "Completely dead." The woman looked like she wanted to cry or scream or both. "That phone cost me $1,200, she said, her voice shaky. "This is ridiculous. He assaulted me. I'm going to complain. I'm going to sue." A palace security officer walked over calmly. "Madam, there are signs posted everywhere explaining that you must not touch the guards or cross the barriers." The guard was doing his duty to protect his post. "But he scared me on purpose," she protested. "You touched a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces without permission," the officer replied firmly but politely. "You're actually lucky you're only dealing with a broken phone. You could be facing charges." The woman opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Around her, tourists were still recording and taking pictures. She could hear someone nearby saying, "Did you see that?" "She totally deserved it." Another voice added, "Why do people think they can just do whatever they want? There are rules for a reason." Her husband took her arm gently. "Let's just go," he said quietly. "Please, let's just go before this gets worse." She snatched her ruined phone from his hand and stuffed it in her purse. As they walked away, she was muttering angrily under her breath about aggressive British people and how this would never happen in America. But deep down, even though she'd never admitted out loud, she knew the truth. She had crossed a clearly marked boundary. She had ignored the warning signs. She had touched someone who was on duty, doing an important job. And she had paid the price for her entitlement. The guard, meanwhile, had returned to his position of perfect stillness. His face showed no emotion. His eyes stared straight ahead. To him, this was just another day dealing with tourists who thought the rules didn't apply to them. As the woman and her husband disappeared into the crowd, other tourists gave the guard a wide berth. They took their photos respectfully from behind the barriers. They admired his discipline and dedication from a proper distance. One little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why did that lady touch the guard?" His mother smiled down at him. "Because she didn't show respect, sweetie. And when you don't respect others, especially people doing important jobs, sometimes you learn a hard lesson." The boy nodded seriously, looking at the guard with new admiration in his eyes. Back at their hotel room that evening, the woman tried everything to revive her phone. She put it in rice. She tried different chargers. She even blew into all the ports like that might help. Nothing worked. The next day, she had to go to a phone store and buy a brand new phone. Another $1,200 gone. As she handed over her credit card, she thought about that moment at the palace. That split second when she decided to cross the rope and touch the guard. Was that perfect Instagram photo really worth $2,400? Worth the embarrassment? Worth being laughed at by hundreds of strangers? Of course not. But some people have to learn respect the hard way. And that day at Buckingham Palace, one entitled tourist learned that royal guards aren't just decorations. They're real soldiers doing a real job, and they have every right to defend their post and their personal space. The karma was instant. The lesson was clear, and somewhere in London, that broken phone sat in a garbage bin as a reminder that some rules exist for very good reasons. Windsor Castle stood majestically in the afternoon sun, its ancient stones holding centuries of history. Tourists walked respectfully through the grounds, admiring the architecture and watching the guards perform their duties. But then a young woman arrived who saw the whole place as nothing more than a backdrop for her content. She was in her early 20s, dressed in trendy clothes that screamed, "Look at me." Her arms were loaded with equipment, a professional ring light, a fancy tripod, and a designer handbag that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She had that look in her eyes, the one that said she was about to get the perfect content no matter what. She found a spot near where the royal guards marched their patrol routes and started setting up. Other tourists politely moved aside, but she took up a huge amount of space, spreading her equipment across the walkway. A palace staff member approached her kindly. "Excuse me, miss, but you can't block the pathway here. The guards need to complete their patrol." She barely looked up from adjusting her ring light. "I'll just be a few minutes. This is for my followers. I have over 200,000 people waiting for this content." The staff member tried again. "I understand, but this is an active patrol route. You really need to move your equipment. Can you just not right now?" she said, waving him away like he was an annoying fly. "I'm literally about to go live. This is sponsored content. Do you know how much money is involved here?" The staff member sighed and stepped back, but he didn't leave. He knew what was about to happen, and honestly, he'd seen this show before. The young woman positioned herself perfectly in the frame, her ring light making her face glow. She started her live stream with her brightest smile. "Hey guys! Welcome back to my channel. I'm here at Windsor Castle, and today I'm going to show you my newest makeup routine using products from my sponsor." Her chat started filling with comments. Hundreds of people were watching. She was in her element, talking about foundation and contour and highlight, completely oblivious to everything around her. Meanwhile, at the far end of the courtyard, a royal guard had begun his ceremonial march. His steps were precise, his pace was measured, and his path was fixed. He marched the same route every single day, and nothing was going to change that today. The guard marched closer and closer. The young woman kept talking to her camera, now applying lipstick and giggling at comments from her viewers. The staff member called out one more warning. "Miss, please, you need to move now." She held up one finger without looking at him, silently telling him to wait. "And now for the final touch, we're going to add this gorgeous highlighter that literally makes you glow like a..." The guard was 10 feet away. Then 5 feet. His face showed absolutely no expression. His eyes were locked straight ahead. He wasn't slowing down. He wasn't stopping. He wasn't going around. At the last possible second, the young woman glanced up and saw him. Her eyes went wide with panic. She screamed and tried to jump out of the way, but she moved too fast and too carelessly. Her arm hit the tripod. The tripod crashed into the ring light. The ring light toppled over like a falling tree, and its full weight came down directly onto her designer handbag that was sitting open on the ground. The sound of breaking glass and plastic was loud and clear. The ring light shattered. Inside her bag, there was more crunching and cracking. Her backup phone that she'd left sitting on top of everything else in her bag took the full impact, but it wasn't over yet. As she scrambled to save her equipment, she knocked over her makeup bag. Expensive palettes spilled out, hitting the ground and breaking into pieces. Powder makeup exploded into clouds of color. Liquid products splattered across the stone pathway. The guard marched right past her without even a glance, completing his patrol route exactly as he did every single day. The young woman sat on the ground surrounded by her destroyed equipment and ruined makeup. Her live stream was still running. Her phone camera was pointed at the sky now, but the microphone had caught everything. The crash, her scream, the breaking glass, and now her voice saying words that definitely weren't family-friendly. Her live chat was going absolutely crazy with comments, but these weren't the supportive comments she usually got. People were laughing at her. They were calling her entitled. Someone said, "Maybe respect the rules next time." Another wrote, "The guard literally doesn't care about your followers." She grabbed her phone from the ground and looked at the screen. 12,000 people were watching her worst moment. Her face was red, her makeup was smudged from where she'd been sitting on the ground, and tears were starting to form in her eyes. "This is so unfair," she said to the camera, her voice shaky. "I'm going to sue. This is assault. That guard deliberately destroyed my property. I have witnesses. This is all on camera." But the comments didn't support her. They got worse. Someone had already screen recorded the whole thing. People were posting laughing emojis. Her follower count started dropping in real time. 200,000 became 199,000, then 198,000. A palace security officer arrived on the scene. "Miss, I need you to pack up your equipment and leave the premises. You were warned multiple times about blocking the patrol route. But look what happened," she protested, gesturing at her broken things. "Look at all this damage. Someone needs to pay for this." The officer remained calm and professional. "You were blocking an official patrol route after being asked to move 3 times. The guard has every right to complete his duty without obstruction. If you'd like to file a complaint, you can do so. But I should warn you that there are cameras all over this area that recorded you ignoring our staff members' warnings." Her face fell. The reality was hitting her. She had no case. She had no proof of wrongdoing. She only had proof of her own entitlement and disrespect. She ended her live stream quickly, but it was too late. The damage was done. People had already downloaded the video. It was already being shared on other platforms. By the time she got back to her hotel, she was a meme. That night, she counted her losses. The ring light, $400 destroyed. Her backup phone, $800, shattered screen and bent frame, completely unusable. Her makeup palettes, 6 different expensive brands, probably $600 total, all broken into dust. Her tripod had a bent leg and wouldn't stand up straight anymore. Another $200. Over $2,000 gone in 30 seconds. And that didn't even count the loss to her reputation. Her sponsor had already sent an email asking to reconsider their partnership. Her followers kept dropping. The comments on all her recent posts were people mocking her. She lay in bed that night scrolling through the videos people had posted of her incident. Different angles, different versions, all showing the same thing. An entitled young woman who thought she was more important than everyone else, learning a very expensive lesson. One comment stuck with her. Someone had written, "The royal guards have been doing their job for hundreds of years. They've protected kings and queens. They've stood through wars and ceremonies. They've earned respect. What have you done except talk about makeup on the internet?" It was harsh, but it was true. She'd treated the guard like a prop, like a piece of scenery in her video. She'd ignored the rules because she thought her content was more important. She'd assumed the world would bend around her needs, but the world doesn't work that way. Royal guards don't stop their duties for influencers. Ancient castles don't change their rules for social media content. And respect isn't something you can just demand, you have to show it first. She learned all of this the hard way, in front of 12,000 people, with broken equipment scattered around her feet and her pride crushed into powder, just like her expensive makeup palettes. Horse Guards Parade was busy with tourists on this particular Saturday morning. The mounted royal guard sat perfectly still on their magnificent horses, a sight that had captivated visitors for generations. Signs were posted everywhere with clear warnings. Do not touch the horses. These are working animals. They may kick or bite, but some people don't read signs. Or maybe they read them and just decide the rules don't apply to them. A family of 3 approached the area, a mother, father, and their 8-year-old son. It was the boy's birthday, and they'd come to London to celebrate. The mother was dressed in an expensive white designer coat that probably cost more than some people earn in a month. Everything about her screamed money and privilege. She spotted the mounted guard and his beautiful black horse. Her eyes lit up like she'd just found the perfect birthday present. "Oh, this is perfect." she announced loudly. Daniel, go stand next to the horse. This'll be an amazing birthday photo. Daniel looked uncertain. He was a quiet kid, maybe a bit shy. Mom, I don't know. The sign says not to touch the horses. His mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that's just for other people, sweetie. One quick photo won't hurt anything. Come on, don't ruin your own birthday. The father looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should just take a photo from over here. The horse is really big and… Robert, get the camera ready, she cut him off. I swear I have to do everything myself in this family. She grabbed Daniel's hand and pulled him toward the horse, completely ignoring the rope barriers and the warning signs. Other tourists started backing away, some of them whispering to each other. A few pulled out their phones, sensing that something was about to go wrong. The mounted guard sat still and silent on his horse, but you could see a slight tension in his posture. The horse, a well-trained military animal, sensed something was off. Its ears twitched backward. The mother positioned Daniel right next to the horse's front legs. The boy looked scared, his eyes wide. Mom, I really don't want to… Smile, Daniel. Robert, are you getting this? She turned to her husband, who was fumbling with his phone camera. But that wasn't close enough for her. She wanted that perfect shot, the one that would make everyone jealous on social media. She bent down and actually tried to lift Daniel up higher, pushing him closer to the horse. Get closer to the horse, honey. Put your hand on it. No, closer. Robert, zoom in! Are you even trying? The horse shifted its weight, clearly uncomfortable with this strange woman and child invading its space. The guard remained still, but his jaw tightened. The mother, frustrated with not getting her perfect shot, did something incredibly foolish. She reached out herself and tried to pat the horse's neck while simultaneously pushing Daniel even closer. That's when nature took its course. The horse, feeling threatened and uncomfortable, did what horses do when they're bothered. It turned its massive head toward the woman and let out an enormous sneeze. It wasn't just any sneeze. It was the kind of sneeze that only a large animal can produce. Horse saliva and mucus sprayed out in a huge wet explosion. The blast hit the mother directly in her face and all down the front of her pristine white designer coat. The force was so unexpected that she stumbled backward, releasing Daniel, who quickly ran to his father. She stood there in complete shock, her face and coat dripping with horse spray. Her mouth opened in a silent scream for a moment before sound came out. Then she shrieked. It was high-pitched and loud enough that pigeons flew away from nearby rooftops. Oh my God. Oh my God, this is disgusting. She frantically tried to wipe her face with her hands, but that just spread the mess around more. The mounted guard, still sitting perfectly composed, looked down at her with absolutely no expression. But when he spoke, his voice was calm and matter-of-fact. The horse is not a prop, madam. There are warnings posted for your safety and the animal's comfort. Around them, tourists burst into laughter. Someone shouted, "That's what you get!" Another voice called out, "Maybe read the signs next time." People were recording on their phones, capturing every moment of her humiliation. Her white coat was ruined, covered in wet streaks of horse sneeze. Her face was red, whether from the spray or embarrassment was hard to tell. Her husband hurried over with Daniel, who was now crying. Not from being scared of the horse, but from being embarrassed by his mother's behavior and the scene she'd caused. "Can we please just go?" Daniel said through his tears. "Everyone's looking at us. This is the worst birthday ever." The mother tried to maintain some dignity. She pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed at her face uselessly. "This is unacceptable. That horse attacked me. I'm going to file a complaint. I could sue for this." A palace security officer approached. "Madam, there are multiple signs warning visitors not to touch the horses or get too close. These are working military animals, not petting zoo attractions. You ignored the barriers and the warnings." "But look at me. Look at my coat." "This cost 3,000 pounds. She gestured at her ruined designer clothing. The officer remained professional but firm. "And that's unfortunate, but it's the consequence of ignoring safety regulations." The horse reacted naturally to an unwanted intrusion into its space. "You're actually fortunate that's all that happened. These horses are trained for military service and can be quite powerful when they feel threatened." The father touched his wife's arm gently. "Please, let's just go. Daniel is upset, everyone's recording us, and you're making it worse." She opened her mouth to argue more, but then she saw all the phones pointed at her. She saw people laughing. She heard someone say, "Entitled people always think the rules don't apply to them." Her shoulders slumped. She was beaten, humiliated, and covered in horse sneeze. There was nothing left to do but leave. As they walked away, she kept trying to clean her coat with tissues, but it was hopeless. The expensive white fabric was stained beyond any quick fix. She'd need professional cleaning, and even then, there was no guarantee it would ever look the same. Daniel walked between his parents, quiet and sad. His special birthday trip to London had turned into a nightmare of embarrassment. Other kids at school would probably see the videos online. He'd be known as the kid whose mom got sneezed on by a horse. Back at their hotel, the mother locked herself in the bathroom and cried angry tears while trying to wash the mess off her face and hair. The coat went straight into a plastic bag. She couldn't even look at it without feeling humiliated all over again. That night, as she lay in bed, she could hear her husband and son talking in the next room. "Dad, why didn't Mom just listen to the signs?" Daniel asked. His father sighed. "Sometimes grown-ups think they know better than everyone else, buddy. Sometimes we forget that rules are there for good reasons. But the sign was really clear. It said the horses could bite or kick. We could have been hurt. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry your birthday got ruined because we didn't respect that." In the darkness of the bedroom, the mother felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine shame. Not just embarrassment about the incident, but shame about her behavior. She'd ignored clear warnings. She'd dismissed her son's concerns. She'd been rude to her husband. She'd treated a military animal like a toy for her social media photos. And for what? A ruined 3,000-pound coat. A humiliated son on his birthday. Videos of her getting sneezed on by a horse spreading across the internet. Strangers calling her entitled and laughing at her. The karma had been instant and messy. The lesson was clear, even if it was hard to swallow. Rules exist for everyone, no matter how much money you have or how special you think you are. And sometimes nature has its own way of teaching respect. One giant horse sneeze at a time. The Tower of London stood ancient and imposing under the grey morning sky. Tourists moved through the historic site with quiet respect, understanding they were walking through centuries of British history. Among them walked a businessman who clearly thought he was more important than everyone else. He wore an expensive three-piece suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His Italian leather shoes clicked sharply on the stone pathways. He carried a designer briefcase and had that air about him, the kind that said he was used to people jumping when he snapped his fingers. He'd been in London for 3 days of business meetings, and this was supposed to be his one morning of sightseeing before flying back home. But he was already annoyed. The hotel breakfast had been too slow. The taxi driver had taken what he thought was the long route. And now he couldn't figure out which direction to go to see what he wanted. He spotted a royal guard standing at attention near one of the towers. Perfect, he thought. He'd ask for directions. He walked up to the guard with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. "Excuse me," he said, not even trying to be polite. "I need directions to the Crown Jewels exhibit." The guard remained perfectly still, staring straight ahead. His face showed no expression. His eyes didn't move. The businessman waited for exactly 3 seconds before his patience ran out. "Hello, I'm talking to you. Where are the Crown Jewels?" Still nothing. The guard stood like a statue. The businessman's face started turning red. He wasn't used to being ignored. In his world, when he spoke, people listened. "Are you deaf? I asked you a question." A nearby palace worker noticed what was happening and walked over. "Sir, the guards are on duty and cannot speak or break their position. If you need directions, I'd be happy to help you." The businessman barely glanced at her. "I don't need help from you. I need him to tell me where to go." "I understand, sir, but that's not how it works here. The guards—" He held up his hand to silence her, his eyes still fixed on the guard. This had become personal now. It wasn't about directions anymore. It was about showing that he was in charge. "Listen to me very carefully," he said to the guard, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't have time for this. You're just a costume performer. You're a tourist attraction. So drop the act and tell me what I need to know." The palace worker tried again. "Sir, these are real soldiers in Her Majesty's service. They're not performers. Please, if you just—" He ignored her completely. He was getting more aggressive now, his voice getting louder. Other tourists stopped to watch. Some started recording on their phones. "You know what your problem is?" he continued, stepping closer to the guard. "You take yourself too seriously. You're standing here in a funny hat. Pretending to be important, but you're really just here for people like me to take pictures of. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Here, I'll make this simple. I pay taxes. British taxes on my business here. So technically, I pay your salary. That means you work for me. The guard remained absolutely motionless, not even a flicker in his eyes. The businessman made a decision that would prove to be very expensive. He reached out and poked the guard in the chest with his finger. So when I ask you a question, you answer me, got it? What happened next was so fast that several tourists gasped. The guard executed a sharp, precise drill movement, a turn that was part of his routine patrol. His rifle, held properly at his side, swung in the calculated arc of military precision. The movement was perfect, practiced thousands of times. The butt end of the rifle swung around in a perfect arc. It caught the businessman's extended hand, knocked his arm aside, and continued its motion. The businessman was holding a large cup of coffee in his other hand. The impact jarred his entire body. The coffee cup flew from his grip, spinning through the air. Hot coffee sprayed everywhere, all over the front of his expensive suit jacket, soaking into his white dress shirt, splashing onto his tie. But it wasn't over. His briefcase was hanging open on his arm. The coffee poured directly into it, soaking the laptop inside, drenching the papers, ruining the leather interior. The businessman stood there in shock, coffee dripping from his clothes, his briefcase destroyed. The guard continued his patrol movement, marching away with perfect military precision, his face showing absolutely no acknowledgement that anything had happened. For a moment, there was silence. Then the tourists erupted in applause and laughter. Someone shouted, "That's what you get for being rude." Another voice called out, "Should have listened when the lady tried to help you." The businessman looked down at himself. His suit was ruined. The jacket alone had cost him £3,000. The shirt was designer, probably another 200. His tie was silk, custom made, but the real damage was in his briefcase. He set it down and opened it fully, and his heart sank. His laptop was drenched. Coffee dripped from the keyboard. The screen had droplets running down it. He pressed the power button, but nothing happened. The machine was dead. That laptop contained his presentation for Monday's crucial meeting. 3 months of work, client proposals, financial projections, none of it backed up because he'd been too busy to do it. Just that data alone was worth far more than the laptop's £2,000 price tag. The palace worker from earlier approached him, her face professionally neutral. "Sir, I tried to warn you. The guards are performing their duties and cannot be touched or interrupted." He wanted to yell. He wanted to blame someone. But he could see all the cameras pointed at him. He could hear people laughing. He saw a little kid point at him and ask his mother, "Why is that man all wet?" "This is assault," he said weakly, but even he didn't believe it. "Sir, the guard was executing a standard drill movement. You were in his space after being warned that the guards cannot break their position or duties. If anything, you assaulted him by making physical contact first. A security officer arrived. Is there a problem here?" The businessman opened his mouth to complain, but what could he say? That he'd ignored instructions, insulted a guard, and then physically touched him? That he'd called a real soldier a costume performer? That he'd poked a member of the armed forces and expected no consequences? "No," he finally said quietly. "No problem." He picked up his dripping briefcase and walked away, leaving a trail of coffee drops behind him. Tourists parted to let him through, some still chuckling. In the bathroom, he tried to salvage his clothes, but it was hopeless. Coffee stains had set into the expensive fabric. His shirt was see-through where the hot liquid had soaked it. He looked like he'd been in some kind of accident. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "I need you to reschedule Monday's meeting and order me a new laptop to be delivered to the hotel immediately. Top of the line. Also, I'll need a new suit and shirt." "And tie, what happened?" his assistant asked, concerned. He looked at himself in the mirror. Expensive clothes ruined, ego bruised, covered in coffee. "I learned an expensive lesson about respect," he said quietly. That afternoon, sitting in his hotel room wearing the only other clothes he'd packed, he watched the videos that had already appeared online. There he was, pointing at the guard, poking him, being arrogant. And then the perfect moment when everything went wrong. The comments were brutal. "Rich people think they can do whatever they want. That guard is a hero. Love seeing entitled people get what they deserve." He literally poked a soldier and expected nothing to happen? He closed the laptop and sat in silence. The money wasn't even the worst part, though the total damage was probably close to £6,000 between the suit, laptop, and briefcase. The worst part was watching himself behave that way. He'd treated that guard like he was nothing, like he was a prop or a servant. He'd ignored the palace worker who tried to help. He'd made a scene in front of families and children. He'd been the ugly tourist that everyone makes fun of. And for what? For directions he could have gotten from a dozen other people. For his ego? Because he couldn't stand being ignored for 30 seconds? The karma had been instant and public. His expensive suit was ruined. His laptop was destroyed. His pride was shattered. And thousands of people online were watching him learn the hard way that respect isn't determined by how much money you make or how important you think you are. The royal guard was still standing at his post, doing his duty with dignity and discipline, and somewhere in a London hotel room, a businessman sat in a coffee-stained suit, finally understanding that some lessons are worth more than any price tag. Buckingham Palace gleamed in the afternoon sun as tourists milled about, taking pictures and soaking in the historic atmosphere. But the peaceful scene was about to be disrupted by a group of 6 young women who'd already had too much. Champagne and not enough sense, they were dressed in matching pink outfits, a bachelorette party, celebrating their friend's upcoming wedding. The bride-to-be wore a white sash and a plastic tiara. They'd been bar hopping since lunch, and their volume knob had only one setting: loud. They stumbled through the palace gates, giggling and shrieking, drawing annoyed looks from other visitors. A few families with young children moved away from them, not wanting their kids exposed to the increasingly inappropriate language and behavior. Okay, listen up, the bride announced, her words slightly slurred. She held up her phone. I saw this video online where someone made a royal guard smile. That's going to be our mission today. Whoever makes a guard react gets free drinks all night. Her friends cheered loudly, causing a nearby security officer to start walking in their direction. But before he could reach them, they'd already spotted their target, a guard standing at perfect attention near the palace entrance. They approached in a giggling swarm, their high heels clicking unevenly on the pavement. Other tourists backed away, some looking concerned, others pulling out their phones because this clearly wasn't going to end well. Hello, handsome, one of the bridesmaids called out. Why so serious? The guard remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Another bridesmaid tried a different approach. Come on, just one little smile. We're celebrating. It's her wedding. Still nothing. The guard's face could have been carved from stone. The bride, emboldened by champagne and the encouragement of her friends, stepped closer. I dare someone to make him react. Anyone? Come on, don't be boring. One bridesmaid, wearing a bright pink feather boa, took the challenge. She approached the guard directly, swaying slightly in her heels. You're very cute, you know that? Very strong and handsome in that uniform. The guard's expression didn't change. He didn't even blink. She got bolder, her friends giggling behind her. She started making inappropriate comments about his appearance, his uniform, his stance. The other tourists looked uncomfortable. Parents covered their children's ears. The palace security officer was closer now, but before he could intervene, the situation escalated. The bridesmaid with the feather boa decided to go for broke. She reached out to drape the boa around the guard's shoulders, saying something completely inappropriate that made even her friends gasp. That's when everything went wrong. The guard, following his patrol routine, executed a sharp forward march. It was perfectly timed, precisely practiced, and completely within his duty. He marched forward with military precision. The bridesmaid, caught off guard by his sudden movement, squealed and tried to jump backward. But she was wearing 4-inch heels on uneven pavement, and she'd had too much champagne. Her ankle twisted and she stumbled directly into the bride. The bride, also in high heels and slightly intoxicated, couldn't catch her balance. She crashed into the friend next to her. That friend fell into another. It was like dominoes in slow motion. All 6 women ended up on the ground in a tangle of pink fabric, feathers, and limbs. High heels scattered across the pavement. Someone's purse dumped its contents everywhere. The bride's plastic tiara rolled away into the crowd. But the worst part? One of the bridesmaids had fallen directly into a patch of ground that pigeons had been using as their personal bathroom all morning. She sat there, her expensive dress now stained with fresh bird droppings. a look of horror spreading across her face. The guard continued his march without breaking stride, his face still showing absolutely no emotion. He completed his routine patrol movement and returned to his position as if nothing had happened. The tourists who'd been watching burst into laughter and applause. Camera flashes went off everywhere. Videos were recording from multiple angles. Someone shouted, "That's what you get for being disrespectful." The security officer reached them as they were trying to untangle themselves and stand up. Their dignity was as scattered as their belongings across the pavement. "Ladies, I need to see identification from all of you," he said firmly. "What? Why?" the bride demanded, trying to adjust her dress, which had ridden up during the fall. "Harassment of Her Majesty's guards is a serious offense. You'll be receiving citations." "Citations? Are you kidding me?" "He's the one who pushed us." The bridesmaid with bird droppings on her dress was close to tears. Another palace official arrived with a clipboard. "Actually, madam, the guard was performing his standard patrol duty. You were in his path after being asked to step back. We have multiple witnesses and camera footage showing your group making inappropriate comments and attempting to touch the guard without permission." The bride's face went pale. She suddenly looked a lot more sober. "Citations? Like legal citations? We were just having fun. It's my bachelorette party." "That doesn't give you the right to harass military personnel," the officer replied. "I'll need all of your names and identification. You're also being banned from all royal properties." One by one, they pulled out their IDs with shaking hands. Their expensive dresses were dirty and torn. One bridesmaid had lost her shoe completely. The feather boa that started it all lay trampled on the ground. As the officers took their information, tourists continued to record. The videos were probably already being uploaded to social media. The bride started crying, her makeup running down her face. "My wedding is in 2 weeks," she sobbed. "This is going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to see this." Her maid of honor, still trying to wipe bird droppings off her dress with tissues, patted her shoulder awkwardly. Maybe people won't share it that much? But they both knew that was wishful thinking. Videos of entitled people getting what they deserve always go viral. After 20 minutes of paperwork, they were finally allowed to leave. They gathered their scattered belongings, shoes, phones, makeup, the broken tiara, and limped away from the palace. Their matching pink outfits were dirty and disheveled. They looked nothing like the confident, party-ready group that had arrived an hour earlier. They'd had dinner reservations at an expensive restaurant. They'd planned to go to a fancy nightclub after. Instead, they ended up back at their hotel, exhausted and humiliated. The bride sat on her hotel bed, scrolling through social media on her phone. It had only been 2 hours and the videos were everywhere. Dozens of different angles of their fall. Thousands of comments making fun of them. Strangers calling them entitled and disrespectful. One video had a caption that read, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." It had already been shared 15,000 times. She called her fiancé, crying, "The worst thing happened today. I'm so embarrassed. Everyone's going to see this before the wedding." "What happened?" he asked, concerned. Through tears, she told him everything. The champagne, the inappropriate behavior, the guard, the fall, the citations. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "You harassed a royal guard?" he finally said. "Why would you do that?" "We were just having fun. We didn't mean any harm. But you were making inappropriate comments to someone who was just doing their job. And you tried to touch him without permission. How is that okay?" She didn't have an answer. Deep down, she knew he was right. They'd been disrespectful. They'd crossed boundaries. They'd treated the guard like an object for their entertainment instead of a person with a real job and real feelings. The next morning, nursing hangovers and wounded pride, the 6 women met for breakfast. They looked rough. Dark circles under their eyes. No one had slept well. The bridesmaid who'd fallen in bird droppings had tried to clean her dress, but it was ruined. 300 pounds down the drain. The maid of honor had twisted her ankle and was limping. The bride's plastic tiara had broken when someone stepped on it during the chaos. But the real damage was to their reputations. Friends and family had already seen the videos. The bride's future mother-in-law had called, not angry but deeply disappointed. "I thought I raised my son to choose someone with better judgment," she'd said. Work colleagues were sharing the videos. One bridesmaid had already been called into her boss's office for a conversation about appropriate behavior and company representation. Another had been tagged in the videos by dozens of people with laughing emojis. The citations they'd received meant they'd have to pay fines, and the ban from royal properties meant they couldn't even do proper tourist activities for the rest of their trip. As they picked at their breakfast, the bride finally spoke. "We really messed up, didn't we?" Her friends nodded quietly. The fun, carefree attitude from yesterday was completely gone. "That guard was just doing his job," one bridesmaid said, "and we treated him like garbage. We were drunk and disrespectful, and now the whole world knows it." The karma had been swift and public. 6 women ended up on the ground, covered in dirt and bird droppings, their dignity destroyed along with their expensive outfits. They'd come to London for a celebration and left with citations, bans, viral videos, and a hard lesson about respect. And somewhere at Buckingham Palace, the royal guard stood at his post, his face calm and professional, having dealt with yet another group of people. Windsor Castle was experiencing a beautiful sunny afternoon, the kind that brings out crowds of tourists eager to experience British history and culture. Among these visitors was a young man who saw the whole place as nothing more than a stage for his social media content. He was a food blogger with about 50,000 followers on his channel. He'd spent the morning filming himself eating traditional British food around London, and now he had what he thought was a brilliant idea for his next video. He'd bought fish and chips from a nearby shop and was carrying the steaming package toward the royal guards. His camera was already set up on a small tripod, positioned to capture both him and the guard in the frame. He'd spent 10 minutes getting the angle just right, completely ignoring the "no eating in this area" signs posted clearly around the guard stations. A palace staff member noticed him setting up and approached politely. "Excuse me, sir. You can't eat food in this area, and you need to maintain distance from the guards." He barely looked up from adjusting his camera. Yeah, I'll be quick. Just getting some content. My followers love this stuff. Sir, I'm telling you that eating is not permitted here and you need to." He held up his hand to silence her, his attention on his camera screen. "Look, I do this for a living, okay? I know what I'm doing. Just give me 5 minutes." The staff member sighed but stayed nearby, knowing from experience that this probably wasn't going to end well. The blogger pressed record and put on his biggest, fakest smile. "Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm at Windsor Castle, and I've got authentic British fish and chips. And look, I've got a royal guard right here to make this video extra special." He unwrapped his food, the smell of fried fish and vinegar wafting through the air. He held the package close to the guard's face, waving it around as he talked to his camera. "You know, these guards are famous for never moving or reacting to anything. Let's see if the smell of this delicious fish and chips can break their concentration." He laughed at his own joke, completely oblivious to how disrespectful he was being. The guard remained perfectly still, but there was a subtle tightness around his eyes that suggested he was not amused. The blogger continued his performance, making exaggerated eating sounds and describing the food in detail. "The fish is so crispy. The chips are perfect. I wonder if our friend here is getting hungry. What do you think, buddy? Want a bite?" He actually held a chip up toward the guard's face, as if offering him food like he was some kind of animal in a zoo. Tourists around them looked uncomfortable. Several people shook their heads in disapproval. "Come on, just one little bite. I bet you're starving standing out here all day." The blogger was really playing it up for his camera now, completely focused on getting entertaining content. He turned away from the guard to face his camera directly, holding up the fish and chips container. "You know, I think these guards must have the hardest job in the world, standing here smelling all this amazing food, and they can't even—" That's when the seagull struck. Anyone who spent time near British coastal areas or historic sites knows that seagulls are bold, opportunistic, and absolutely fearless when it comes to stealing food. This particular seagull had been watching from a nearby rooftop, and the smell of fish and chips was too tempting to resist. The bird swooped down with perfect precision. Its timing was incredible. The blogger had just raised the fish and chips container higher, gesturing dramatically for his camera. When the seagull's talons closed around the entire package, the blogger felt the container ripped from his hands. He looked up just in time to see the seagull flying away with his lunch. But the bird had grabbed it at an angle, and the container flipped in its talons. The hot fish, the greasy chips, and all the vinegar poured out of the container and fell directly onto the blogger's head. The fish hit first, sliding down his face and leaving a trail of grease and batter. Chips bounced off his shoulders and stuck in his hair. Vinegar splashed into his eyes, making him yelp in pain. Oil soaked into his shirt, creating dark stains that spread across the fabric. He stood there, dripping with fish and chips, his hands raised in shock, his mouth open. The seagull circled overhead, a piece of fish in its beak, almost looking smug. The tourists who'd been watching burst into laughter. It started with a few chuckles and quickly grew into roaring laughter from dozens of people. Camera phones were everywhere, all pointed at him. Flash photography lit up the scene like he was a celebrity on a red carpet, except he was covered in food instead of dressed in designer clothes. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Even the queen seagulls demand respect." Another voice called out, "That bird just did what we all wanted to do." The blogger frantically tried to wipe the vinegar from his burning eyes. His carefully styled hair was now matted with grease and dotted with bits of fried potato. His shirt was completely ruined, soaked through with oil that was never coming out. But the worst part was his camera. In his shock, he'd stumbled backward, tripping over his own tripod. The camera fell and hit the stone pavement with a sickening crack. The lens shattered. The screen went black. He scrambled to pick it up, his greasy hands making it hard to grip. He pressed the power button desperately, but nothing happened. The camera was dead, and that camera had cost him £800. The palace staff member from earlier approached, trying not to smile. "Sir, I did try to warn you about eating in this area. The wildlife can be quite aggressive, and this is insane," he sputtered, still dripping with food. "That bird attacked me. This is dangerous. Someone needs to do something about those birds. The signs clearly state no eating in this area, sir. This is partly why. Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. You're creating a disturbance and violating posted rules." "Leave? I can't leave looking like this. I need to clean up. There are public restrooms near the exit. Please gather your equipment and go." Other tourists were still laughing and recording. The seagull had landed on a nearby wall, still enjoying its stolen fish, watching the chaos it had caused. The blogger tried to pack up his broken camera and tripod, but his hands were so greasy that everything kept slipping. He finally gave up and just carried everything awkwardly in his arms, leaving a trail of greasy drips behind him as he walked toward the exit. In the public restroom, he looked at himself in the mirror and wanted to cry. His hair was destroyed, full of grease, vinegar, and small bits of fried batter. His shirt was completely unwearable, stained with oil and patterns that looked almost artistic in how thoroughly they'd ruined the fabric. He tried washing his hair in the sink, but the grease was stubborn. He used all the hand soap in the dispenser and still couldn't get it all out. Other people came into the bathroom, took one look at him, and backed out quickly. The smell was horrible. He reeked like a fish and chip shop. The vinegar made his eyes water every time he inhaled. He'd have to throw away the shirt. There was no saving it. But the real disaster was his content. He'd been filming when the seagull attacked, but the camera had been positioned to show him getting hit with the food from the worst possible angle. That footage was probably destroyed with the broken camera, but he knew dozens of tourists had recorded the whole thing from multiple angles. By the time he made it back to his hotel, walking quickly with his head down, trying to avoid people on the street who kept staring at him and wrinkling their noses, the videos were already online. He showered for 30 minutes, washing his hair 3 times, and still couldn't completely get rid of the smell. His shirt went straight into the trash. His pride went with it. That evening he searched social media for his name and wished he hadn't. The videos were everywhere. Different angles, different versions, all showing the same humiliating moment. The seagull stealing his food, the fish and chips falling on his head, him stumbling and breaking his camera, his face shocked and dripping with grease. The comments were brutal. "This is what happens when you disrespect people doing their jobs. That seagull is a hero. Imagine thinking you're more important than posted rules. Play with respect. Lose with consequences." One comment had over 10,000 likes. The Royal Guard didn't even have to do anything. Nature handled this disrespectful fool all by itself. His follower count started dropping. People were unfollowing him in real time. The food companies that sponsored his content started sending emails asking to pause the partnership while things settle down. He lay in bed that night, his hair still smelling faintly of vinegar despite multiple washings, and did the math. The broken camera, £800. The ruined shirt, £60. Lost sponsorship deals, potentially thousands of pounds over the next few months. The damage to his reputation, priceless and not in a good way. But more than the money, it was the humiliation. He'd been so focused on getting entertaining content that he'd forgotten basic respect. He'd ignored posted rules. He'd waved food in a soldier's face like he was an animal. He'd treated a sacred duty as a joke for his followers. And karma, delivered by one very opportunistic seagull, had taught him a lesson he'd never forget. Sometimes nature has a way of enforcing respect when humans forget to show it themselves. And sometimes the most viral content you create is the kind you wish had never been recorded at all. Horse Guards Parade was busy with afternoon tourists, the ancient site buzzing with the quiet energy of people appreciating British history and ceremony. But a group of teenagers was about to turn that peaceful atmosphere into chaos, all for social media views. There were 4 of them, all around 17 years old, and they thought they had the perfect plan for viral content. The ringleader of the group had seen videos online of people pranking others and getting millions of views. She was convinced this was her ticket to internet fame. She gathered her friends in a huddle away from the crowds, explaining her idea in excited whispers. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk up to that guard on the horse and pretend like I'm going to hit him, but I'll stop right before I actually do it. It'll be hilarious. Everyone will think I actually did it. One of her friends looked uncertain. I don't know. That seems kind of mean. And probably illegal. It's just a prank. People do this stuff all the time online. Besides, he won't even react. These guards are trained to stay still no matter what happens. Another friend was already pulling out her phone. I'll record from this angle. You 2 stand over there and film from the sides. We'll get multiple angles and edit them together. This is going to be amazing. They positioned themselves strategically around the mounted royal guard. He sat perfectly still on his magnificent black horse, a picture of discipline and military precision. He'd been doing this job for 3 years and had seen all kinds of tourist behavior, but he had no idea what was about to happen. The girl checked that all the cameras were recording. She gave her friends a thumbs up. Then she put on what she thought was a tough expression and started walking quickly toward the guard. Her friends were filming everything. She picked up speed, raising her hand as if she was about to strike the guard. Her plan was to stop just inches from his face, make a dramatic gesture, and then run away laughing while her friends captured everyone's shocked reactions. But what she didn't understand was that the horse was a highly trained military animal. These horses undergo extensive training to handle threats, loud noises, and dangerous situations. They're trained to protect themselves and their riders. The horse saw her coming. It saw the aggressive posture. It saw the raised hand moving toward its rider. And it did exactly what it was trained to do in the face of a perceived threat. The horse reared up slightly and swung its powerful neck to the side, a defensive movement designed to knock away threats. The force was incredible. Horses are massive, powerful animals, and even a small movement from them carries enormous strength. The teenager didn't have time to stop or dodge. The horse's neck caught her in the chest, and suddenly she was flying backward. She hit the ground hard, landing in a shallow puddle of muddy water that had collected on the old stone pavement. Her phone went flying from her hand. It skittered across the cobblestones like a hockey puck, spinning and bouncing. The sound of the screen shattering was clearly audible even over her cry of shock. But the phone's journey wasn't over. It slid directly into the path of a passing taxi that was driving slowly through the area. The driver didn't see the small phone on the ground. The taxi's wheel rolled right over it with a sickening crunch. The girl sat in the puddle, soaked and muddy, staring in horror at where her phone had just been destroyed. Her friends stood frozen, their own phones still recording, too shocked to move. Palace security officers were on the scene immediately. 2 of them approached the girl while others went to her friends. Don't move, one officer said firmly to the girl. Are you injured? She shook her head, unable to speak, water dripping from her clothes. What exactly were you trying to do? The officer asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Before she could answer, one of her friends blurted out, It was just a prank. For social media. She wasn't really going to hit him. The officer's expression hardened. You were recording an attempted assault on a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces? Do you understand how serious this is? The words attempted assault hit them like cold water. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was a crime. The smiles disappeared from their faces. One friend started crying. More security arrived. The officers collected the teenagers' phones, including the ones that had been recording. The girl's shattered phone was carefully retrieved from where the taxi had destroyed it. It was now evidence. A senior officer arrived and gathered the 4 teenagers together. "I need all of your names, ages, and contact information. You're being detained while we decide whether to press charges." "Charges?" The girl was finally finding her voice, and it was shaking with fear. "But I didn't actually do anything. I was going to stop. You approached a royal guard on horseback in an aggressive manner with your hand raised. The horse perceived you as a threat and defended itself and its rider. You're fortunate the horse didn't kick you. That could have resulted in serious injury or death." The reality was sinking in. They weren't internet pranksters anymore. They were kids in serious legal trouble. Their parents were called. While they waited, sitting on a bench with security watching them, tourists walked by, pointing and whispering. Some were taking pictures. The teenagers sat there wet, muddy, and terrified. When the parents arrived an hour later, the looks on their faces ranged from angry to disappointed to frightened. The senior officer explained the situation to each set of parents separately. "Your daughter was part of a planned attempt to create social media content by pretending to assault a royal guard. The horse reacted defensively and your daughter was knocked down. She's physically unharmed, but this is a very serious matter." One mother burst into tears. "She's 17. She's never been in trouble before. Please, it was just a stupid prank. Attempted assault on military personnel is not a prank, madam. However, because of their ages and because no actual contact was made with the guard, we're willing to handle this with citations rather than arrests. Each of them will receive a formal citation for disorderly conduct and harassment. They're banned from all royal properties indefinitely, and their case will be reviewed by the Crown Prosecution Service to determine if additional charges are warranted." The parents looked like they might be sick. Citations meant court dates, potential criminal records, fines, and the ban meant their daughters couldn't visit any royal sites, not just now, but potentially forever. The girl whose plan this had been was given her shattered phone back. She held the destroyed device in her hands, looking at the cracked screen and bent frame. It had cost her parents £900 just 3 months ago as a birthday present, but the phone was the least of her problems. As they left horse guards with their parents, walking in humiliated silence, she realized how badly she'd messed up. This wasn't going to be viral content that made her famous. This was evidence of a crime that could follow her for years. That evening, grounded in her room, she used her laptop to search for what had happened. The videos were already online. Not her planned prank video, but videos from tourists who'd recorded the whole thing. Her face was clearly visible. Her name was being shared in comments. The videos showed everything from multiple angles. Her approaching the guard aggressively, the horse defending itself, her flying backward into the puddle, her phone skittering away and being crushed by the taxi, her sitting in the mud, defeated and soaked. But worse than the videos were the comments. People weren't just laughing at her. They were angry. Really angry. She could have gotten seriously hurt or hurt that beautiful horse. What kind of person thinks assaulting a soldier is funny? I hope they throw the book at her. This generation is ruined. One comment had thousands of likes. That horse showed more restraint than she deserved. If she'd actually touched the guard, she'd be in jail right now. She got off easy. Her friends were facing the same thing. Videos online, angry comments, disappointed parents, citations, and potential criminal charges. All 4 of them had lost their phones to evidence collection. All 4 were grounded indefinitely. All 4 had court dates looming. The girl's mother came into her room that night. She sat on the bed next to her daughter, who was crying. "I'm so sorry, Mom," the girl sobbed. "It was supposed to be funny. I didn't think anything bad would happen. I just wanted to go viral." Her mother sighed heavily. "Do you understand what you almost did? You approached someone who was just doing their job. You planned to make them feel threatened. For what, internet views? Likes from strangers? I know it was stupid. But I see people do pranks online all the time and everyone loves them. Those videos don't show the consequences, sweetheart. They don't show the legal trouble or the people who get hurt or the lives that get ruined. They just show the funny moment. But real life has consequences. And the consequences kept coming. The citation meant a court appearance. The judge gave them all community service and fines. The girl had to pay a £500 fine plus court costs. She had to complete 100 hours of community service, and the citation would stay on her record. But perhaps the worst consequence was at school. The videos had spread to her classmates. Everyone had seen her getting knocked down by the horse and landing in the puddle. She'd become exactly what she wanted, famous. But for all the wrong reasons. It was late Saturday afternoon at Buckingham Palace, and most tourists were starting to head back to their hotels for dinner. But a rowdy group of 9 young men stumbled through the palace gates, already clearly drunk and looking for trouble. They were celebrating a friend's upcoming wedding, and their afternoon at the pub had left them loud, obnoxious, and completely lacking in judgment. The groom-to-be was the loudest of them all. He wore a ridiculous costume crown and a sash that said "Getting Married." His friends surrounded him, all of them laughing too loud, bumping into other tourists, and drawing disapproving looks from families with children. As they approached the area where the royal guard stood at attention, one of the friends had what he thought was a brilliant idea. "Hey, let's mess with the guard. Show him who's boss." The groom, encouraged by alcohol and the cheers of his friends, puffed out his chest. "Yeah, I'll show these toy soldiers what real men look like." He approached the nearest guard with an exaggerated swagger, his friends following behind like a pack of hyenas. Other tourists started backing away, sensing trouble. Some pulled out their phones, knowing this probably wasn't going to end well. The guard stood perfectly still, his face showing no expression, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He'd dealt with drunk tourists before, but this group seemed particularly determined to cause problems. The groom stood in front of the guard and started making crude jokes. His friends laughed and encouraged him. He began mocking the guard's stance, trying to imitate his posture but doing it in a deliberately disrespectful way. "Look at me. I'm a fancy guard. I stand here all day doing nothing." He laughed at his own joke and his friends howled with laughter. A palace staff member rushed over. "Gentlemen, you need to move along. This behavior is not acceptable." "Oh, relax," one of the friends said, waving her away. "We're just having a bit of fun. It's his last weekend of freedom." "Sir, these are active-duty military personnel. You need to show respect and keep your distance." The groom ignored her completely. Emboldened by the alcohol and his friend's encouragement, he reached up and tried to place his ridiculous costume crown on the guard's head, like he was playing dress-up with a mannequin. What happened next was so fast that several people gasped. The guard executed a sharp, defensive drill movement. It was a standard butt-strike motion, practiced thousands of times in training, designed to create distance from threats. His rifle moved in a precise arc, the wooden butt end swinging around with controlled force. The strike caught the groom's extended arm, not hard enough to break anything but with enough force to send a clear message. The groom yelped in pain and stumbled backward, clutching his arm, but the movement didn't stop there. The guard's drill continued as trained and the rifle's momentum continued its arc. The groom, off balance and drunk, tried to catch himself but instead crashed into his friends behind him. They all went down like bowling pins, 9 grown men in a tangled heap on the ground. The ridiculous crown went flying and landed in a nearby fountain. Someone's phone fell and cracked. Another person's drink spilled all over 3 of them. The tourists who'd been watching erupted in applause and laughter. Children pointed and giggled. Camera flashes went off everywhere. The groom and his friends lay in a pile, confused and hurting, while the guard returned smoothly to his position as if nothing had happened. But it wasn't over yet. Palace security descended on the scene immediately. Multiple officers arrived, surrounding the group before they could fully untangle themselves and stand up. "Nobody move," the lead security officer commanded. "You're all being detained." "Detained?" The groom was suddenly looking a lot more sober, fear cutting through the alcohol fog. "For what?" "Attempted assault on a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces. Public intoxication. Disorderly conduct, harassment. Should I continue?" The reality hit them all at once. This wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't a fun party story. They were in serious trouble. The officers took their identification one by one. They were separated and questioned individually. The groom kept trying to explain that he didn't mean anything by it and was just having fun. But the officers weren't interested in excuses. Meanwhile, one of his friends was complaining about his arm where the rifle had struck him. "I need a doctor. He assaulted me. I'm injured." A medic was called to check him over. After a brief examination, the medic declared it was just a bruise. "You'll be fine. Nothing's broken, but it hurts. I want to press charges." The security officer supervising the examination shook his head. "Sir, You attempted to put an object on a guard's head while he was on duty. He defended himself using appropriate force. If anyone's pressing charges here, it's not going to be you. They were held at the palace security office for over 4 hours. They missed their expensive dinner reservations at a fancy restaurant that had been booked months in advance. They missed their plans to visit a nightclub. They sat in uncomfortable chairs, sobering up, while officers processed their cases and reviewed security footage. The videos showed everything. The approaching the guard, the mocking behavior, the attempt to place the crown, the defensive movement, all of it captured in perfect detail from multiple security cameras. Finally, a senior officer addressed them all. "Gentlemen, you're being issued criminal citations for disorderly conduct and harassment of military personnel. Each of you will pay a fine of £300. You're banned from all royal properties indefinitely. The groom is facing additional charges for attempted assault. Your case is being forwarded to the Crown Prosecution Service." The groom's face went pale. "Additional charges? What does that mean?" "It means you could face criminal prosecution. You attempted to make physical contact with a soldier on duty. That's a serious offense." One of his friends started crying. Actually crying. "I have a job in finance. A criminal record will ruin my career. Please, we're sorry. We were just drunk and stupid." The officer's expression didn't soften. "Yes, you were. And now you're facing the consequences of your actions." They were finally released around 10 o'clock at night. They stumbled out of the palace grounds, exhausted and humiliated. The groom was cradling his bruised arm. Others were nursing bruised egos and sore muscles from their fall. The groom needed medical attention for his arm, so they went to an emergency room. The wait was 3 hours. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs under harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by people with real injuries and illnesses. They felt ridiculous in their party clothes, smelling of alcohol and sweat. When the doctor finally saw the groom, she examined his arm and confirmed it was just bruising and mild swelling. "Ice it and take some pain medication. It'll heal in a few days, that's it." He'd been hoping for something more serious. Some kind of proof that he'd been truly injured. "That's it. You're lucky it wasn't worse. What happened?" When he explained, the doctor's expression turned cold.
"You tried to touch a royal guard while he was on duty?"
"What were you thinking?" He had no answer. There was no good answer. By the time they got back to their hotel, it was past 1 in the morning. They were supposed to leave London the next afternoon, having enjoyed a weekend of celebration. Instead, they dragged themselves to their rooms, defeated and facing serious legal problems. The next morning, nursing massive hangovers, they met for breakfast. Nobody was talking. Nobody was laughing. The fun, carefree atmosphere of the party weekend had completely evaporated. The groom checked his phone and wished he hadn't. The videos were everywhere. Dozens of tourists had recorded the incident from different angles. It was on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thousands of people had seen it. Hundreds of comments mocked them. "Drunk idiots get what they deserve. That guard is a hero. Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. I hope they all get criminal records." One video had been viewed over 1 million times. It showed the entire sequence. Him mocking the guard, trying to put the crown on his head, the defensive strike, all of them falling in a heap. The caption read, "Royal Guard deals with disrespectful tourists. Instant karma." His friends were seeing the same videos. Their families were calling, having seen them online. His own mother had called 3 times, but he couldn't bring himself to answer. "How do you explain to your mother that you got arrested for harassing a soldier?" One friend had already received an email from his employer. "We've been made aware of an incident involving you this weekend. Please report to HR first thing Monday morning." That conversation was not going to go well. The groom's fiancée called. She'd seen the videos too. She was crying on the phone. "How could you do this? Our wedding is in 2 weeks. What if you have a criminal record? What if you end up in jail? Our families have seen these videos. I'm so embarrassed." He tried to apologize, tried to explain, but she wasn't hearing it. "You made me a joke. Everyone's going to remember this at our wedding. My parents are asking if we should postpone." After she hung up, he sat staring at his phone. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of his life was now overshadowed by his drunken stupidity. His future wife was questioning whether to marry him. His friends were facing career consequences, and he was facing potential criminal prosecution. The financial damage was adding up too. The citation fines, £300 each,